Man, you are one pathetic loser. No offense.
No, none taken.
Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be talking about a new quote-unquote anime that has been released to Crunchyroll. It is a Crunchyroll original and I'm sure you have heard of it if you have clicked on this video. High Guardian Spice was released in October of 2021. And currently on IMDb, it is rated 2.1 stars out of 5. I am going to get into what I think about the show in this video. The overall consensus is that it sucks, and I'm gonna break that down today in this video and tell you what I think about it. Because unlike a lot of the content creators on YouTube that I've been watching, I actually did not hate the show. Before you leave and call me trash or whatever, I will be ripping apart the show in this video, for sure, but I do believe that it did have some things going for it, and I'm going to discuss them today. I do have a few pages of notes. I did watch the entire series as of now, and I managed to get through it all in about an afternoon and a half. There are 12 episodes. All of them boil down to being around 20 minutes, maybe, if you skip the OPs. You're not going to waste that much of your life watching it. Not that I recommend you watch it, but I'll get into that later. On Crunchyroll, the synopsis of the show states, "The lives of four fierce girls converge at High Guardian Academy, the one place where they can stumble comically towards adulthood, while becoming the heroes they've always admired. As they master the ways of battle and sorcery, the foursome form alliances, uncover legacies, face betrayals, and discover their true identities while preparing to protect the world from an ominous unknown threat." There we go. The punctuation is kind of terrible, and that was a very long run-on sentence at the end there, but yeah, that's the synopsis. Right off the bat, I can tell you that that isn't the way that I would explain the show if I were to tell somebody else what it was about. What I would say is follow two random girls that you don't care about whatsoever as they go on a journey to a high school where people are mean to them. They meet two other girls. One of them is mean. One of them is really nice. The mean one comes around at the end because that's what main characters do. They fight bad things, have a transgender principal, and fall in love with other people, kind of, while fighting a cat girl. And the sad mopey one does something in the background while the blonde small dwarf girl doesn't do that. But there is Slimeboy, and we'll get into Slimeboy later. Now, when I decided to give this show a shot and actually review it with as close to a non-bias judgment as I could get, I was still going in with a lot of negative feedback from other people, so I was expecting pretty bad. First of all, I would like to talk about the animation and aesthetics, which a lot of people are confused and angry about. It's a very hot topic right now. I'm going to say right off the bat, the animation can be absolutely awful. It can look terrible. It's not great animation. It's very stiff most of the time, very ungrounded. It can basically never be consistent. If you look in the background, things aren't moving. It just looks very juvenile. And you might say, what gives you the right to say that things are bad, and what do you know about animation? Well, I'm doing an animation project right now at school. Okay, I'm animating, and I'm making animations that look pretty dang bad. They don't look that good. I'm not that great at animating, but I know that. I can look at it and I can say, this animation doesn't look too good. This is popping. That line weight is off. I didn't use the correct brush size here. Oh look, oh my god, that's clipping over there. What do? I gotta fix that. And I would fix it. Before I turn it into anybody, I would fix that issue. And I'm one person. I'm working on a team, but in my animation, the ones that I have submitted so far, I'm one person. I've been animating, cleaning it up, lining it, coloring it, and bringing it to its final composition all by myself so far. And you know what? It's kind of hard. Animation is pretty hard, and I have to give them credit on that. But when you're working in a group, a large group, I would assume, with a team, and all your job is to make good animation, I feel like people expect good animation, you know? And let's talk about the style. The style is very reminiscent at times of She-Ra, and She-Ra is similar because it's kind of like a Western style anime look, you know? It's not as anime as like Avatar, but it's still kind of like that anime kind of vibe. You can tell that they were influenced by that. And I watched She-Ra thinking, oh, this is a pretty like cute show. Like this show is very aesthetically pleasing. This show is trying to do the same kind of thing where they kind of mix anime and Western styles, where they kind of are leaning a bit more towards an anime look, I would say, or at least they're trying to, but they're animating completely in more of a Western cartoon style. The animating kind of reminds me a lot of like the Owl House, except it's nowhere near as smooth or beautiful as the Owl House, but they genuinely don't really do a very good job. There's a lot of line weight issues. The line quality changes a lot too. In some scenes, it's a very smooth line, and in other scenes, it's just wobbly as heck. The style seems to change every now and again. I've seen the chibi-esque style change. There are portions of the show where the chibi style actually looks better. Like this more simplified style looks even more like authentic anime, which is kind of a shame. But I mean, and here's what I'm trying to get at. It doesn't have to be anime to be a good show, a well animated, good looking show. We've seen that from many Western animations. A lot of TV shows look very nice and aesthetically pleasing, and there aren't so many mistakes. But I feel like they tried too much to be an anime, being a Crunchyroll original, and that just sucks because they tried too many things that just failed. There's a few little scenes that I'd like to point out. There's a point where Sage's hair is flying up, and it's supposed to be like kind of a Ghibli film style, I think, but it really doesn't work because it's not smooth. It's not like aesthetically pleasing whatsoever. And then they also put in sound effects. Like they use Foley work to make it seem like her hair is actually moving.
When we were kids, you had fun just being around me. You didn't need us to go spelunking into some stupid volcano full of hot knives.
There's a reason that Ghibli didn't do that. It's because it's not supposed to be a literal occurrence, really. It's supposed to more show the idea of maybe anger, surprise, being grossed out, like shuddering in Spirited Away. I don't think it's actually supposed to be like, oh, their hair flew up and was flying around and stuff. It's just supposed to be like fun. In Howl's Moving Castle, his hair flies up. But you know, that's like, it's magical. It doesn't take you away from reality, really. It just looks cool. It's pretty, but it doesn't work in this situation. And it seems like in this show they tried to do a lot of things. It seems like they were very influenced by other forms of media. It just didn't work. They didn't do it as well as they could have. Another example is the freeze frame at the end of the opening song. First of all, the opening song is about 72 hours long. It's so long. They really went for that anime OP when making the opening song. It's not a very pleasant song. It's very childlike, and I'll get to that later, but this is not a children's show. And that's fine. You can have like a fun, peppy song, but it just like almost 2 minutes of that kind of made me want to cry.
All of our dreams will soon come true if we only try. All of our hopes come shining through. Just look into my eyes.
But at the very last freeze frame, that's held there for like a few seconds so that you can see it. It's supposed to be like that epic, like adventure time moment. It's supposed to be like this fun moment where like you're seeing the characters. But in this show, that freeze frame, first of all, is kind of poorly staged. It doesn't look that interesting, and at the same time, it's not drawn very well. Most of them are off model, it looks very warped, and they should have just spent a little bit more time on that. The backgrounds look pretty okay for some of the time, but those are not consistent either. They go from a more painterly look to more graphic, and then there's actual JPEGs kind of just like shoved in there sometimes. There's a lot of photo bashing in some. Some of it is line art. It's not consistent. And we've seen this kind of thing happen before in like Amazing World of Gumball with the mixed media effect, and it can merge really well to make this like very interesting style of animation. But this show does not do that very well. And that is kind of the consistent theme of this show, is that they tried, but it didn't work very well. We are now going to talk about the pros of the animation and aesthetics, because there are some good parts about this. Sometimes the animation is really fluid and nice, but it seems like there's like one animator in this team of people that was really good at animating fight scenes. And it kind of reminds me of the Owl House, where you can tell that somebody specific animated like a bunch of the fight scenes and the dancing scene and like all the really fluid scenes that you see. But since the Owl House is actually animated pretty well and is consistent, it's not as jarring. There are a few scenes later on in the season that have like this very old anime style fighting animation, and it's pretty pleasant at times. There's a point where Rose is fighting with Olive, one of the antagonist characters, and the animation is pretty dang nice. It looks like it came out of, I don't know, I'd say like perhaps Avatar: The Last Airbender. It could have come from that. It's not great, it's okay. It's not bad. And it makes me think like, oh, well, if they had this one person doing this, like, why wasn't this person in charge of everything? I don't know. But it's very clear to see that there were competent people working on this show, just not everybody, or maybe they were just crunched for time, you know? That's also a possibility. Animation is long and hard. It takes a lot of work, but it's been a little bit since I've seen a show that is this half-baked. Another good part of the show is that there are a lot of character designs that are pretty good, or just like decent. There's not too many terrible character designs. There's some weird hair here and there, but it's not horrible. Overall, the palette is pretty nice. The characters stick out from the background. The show looks okay. If everyone was just not moving, it's watchable. It could be a lot better. The aesthetics when it comes to visuals are not the only thing that fell short in this animation. The voice acting and delivery is something else that I'd like to talk about. And some of it is so interesting that I am almost in favor of it. First, we're going to talk about the cons though. The audio for everyone's lines are all over the place. You can hear the room buzzing in some of them. The volume is different for some.
Old magic, there'd be no foundations. No healing medicine, no sigil enchantment, no terraspheres.
This show would have been fine if it was released on like Cartoon Network and was a little bit better. I'm sure it would have done actually pretty well if they had polished it up and threw it on Cartoon Network. But the fact that it was on Crunchyroll, a website for anime, and it's like the love child between Steven Universe, She-Ra, and the Owl House, like I don't accept it's bad. Because all of those shows are pretty well animated. It's just, it's not animated very well. If it was animated very well, if they had high production quality, it would be okay. And if they like wrote a little better. But we'll talk about that later. Back to my notes. My very professional notes. Long story short, the volume, sound quality, delivery is just kind of awful from time to time. It's not always. The audio quality goofs up a little bit more than the line delivery does, but there are some points where people say things and it just doesn't make any sense why they would say it that way.
I thought we were past all that.
Uh-huh. You thought?
Are we done?
Snapdragon, this is your father's weapon?
It is.
Now there is one character, and his name is Slimeboy. I don't think we figure out his real name. If we did, then I completely did not catch that. But they call him Slimeboy. His character design aesthetically looks okay. It's pretty cute. Solid boy. His voice is a fucking trip. It's a gosh dang trip. I mean, every single line that he says makes me think that they just told him to say all of his lines at once and never told him to come back. Like, just told him, read through all these lines once, give it to us, and then you can be on your merry way.
Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, it's okay. Slimeboy, right? You were there when I got this thing.
Oh, yeah. Hey, Parnell, I think this lunatic overdid it on Aloe's special cookies. It's okay, dude. Broken instruments make good new sounds. Want to try? Shadowboxing with memory ghosts is way easier than apologizing to someone you care about.
It does not sound like this guy did any additional takes. It just sounds like they went through them. And I actually really love it. It makes me adore this character because his voice is serene. It's not a bad voice. It's pretty cute. It's pretty like whatever. You can't understand him at all sometimes, but he's just wholesome, and I do like Slimeboy. I cannot argue with the fact that his audio is terrible at times, and you cannot tell what he's saying, but he is the best boy in the entire show. So that's what I'll give this show. They have Slimeboy. Now moving on to the actual pros, the good things about the voice acting and delivery. As I was just saying, some of the characters actually have interesting voices. Like, they're not cookie cutter perfect anime dub voices, which this isn't an anime dub. It's obviously a Western cartoon, and they're all just automatically speaking in English, and it's not a dub. But there are still cartoons that suffer with kind of same voice syndrome, and this show actually does a pretty good job. Very few characters sound alike. There's a couple other background characters that have really interesting voices. Of course, the two main characters aren't that notable. The other two characters, Time and Parsley, have pretty generic voices, but they're still like better than the main characters, I guess. The principal's voice is pretty good. It's not recorded very well, but it's not that generic. It's interesting. Some voices sound like they're being put on, and you know that happens in kids shows especially. This isn't a kids show, but we're gonna treat it like one because it looks and just seems like one. It's the production value is a kids show worthy production value. But they could definitely benefit from some good equipment, and even just saying like, hey dude, that didn't sound quite right, maybe take it again. Kind of relating to audio, the music and sound effects the music wasn't bad, but it was very loud, especially in the very beginning of the show. You sometimes can't hear over the music, or sometimes the voices are too loud. It's just the volume's everywhere. Sometimes the background music or the background noises would just be way too loud compared to the characters speaking, and it would just kind of like pull you out of the scene.
New seasons, new friends, new grogs.
Overall, I think that they could have done better with audio in general, just paying attention to it and making sure that it sounds good. Because honestly, I think that this audio in this video right now is better than some of the audio that is put in that show, which like is so sad because this is a microphone on my cat ear headset. The next category that I'd like to move on to is writing and pacing. So the writing in the show was interesting. Scenes sometimes just straight up end. They just don't have a conclusion.
You almost chop off a person's head one time, and it's like, I was sure I was gonna have to fight her to defend your honor.
My hero.
or at least like sentences don't.
It's a festival! Sheesh. Cynical. I was just...
The writing doesn't necessarily make sense sometimes. Sometimes two characters will be in a conversation and one of them will just say something kind of random, like it doesn't really pertain to the actual conversation that they're having. Sometimes there's like sentences that just like are stuck in there for no perceivable reason, and like I don't know. Like sometimes it's like, oh, it'll move on the scene, but it's really not good writing and like it just shouldn't have been there anyways. The show isn't good at moving the story forward, really, naturally. It suffers with something that I'd like to call the trauma dump pile, where, like, as soon as one of the characters start bringing up their traumatic backstory, then everyone around them is obligated to do the same, and it makes for a pretty boring and rushed scene whenever it happens. There are ways to bring up people's trauma and make it not so fast-paced, but the show does not do a good job. And that does lead into the LGBTQ representation in this show. As much as I love representation in media, there were points where it was almost forced. Like there were points where it almost broke scenes entirely. Yes, being proud of who you are and showing off that part of you is really important, but it would be really nice if we came across those pieces of a character in like a natural, organic way. Like there's a scene with the principal and Rose when they're talking, and the principal is showing Rose a picture of when he was a child and he and her mom were friends. And Rose realizes that there are two girls in this photograph, and she asks, oh, well, is that your sister or whatever?
Is that your sister?
It's me, actually.
You are a girl?
I'm transgender.
And I don't know, like I expected it to be like a little bit, like maybe it doesn't have to be like nuanced and like you can be completely straightforward with it. You can say like, yo, I'm trans. Like it's like you don't have to be scared to say that, but the way that it went about wasn't, yo, I'm trans. Like it wasn't like, hey, fellow kid, I mean like he's not a child, but I don't know, like it was really awkward is what I'm trying to say. It was a really awkward scene, and like that is completely okay because genuinely I have actually been in that situation before and it has been awkward, but like the rest of the scene wasn't, I guess. What I'm trying to say is it wasn't necessarily forced. It was just awkward. I've seen a lot of people kind of like bashing this show for being overly representational, which is, I think, just kind of a crock of shit. I don't know. I don't think it's an issue to have a bunch of fucking gay people in a show. I don't think that should ever be an issue. But yeah, there could have been more organic ways to go about it. I did find a really funny version of this scene that somebody did on YouTube. I'll put that here.
Do you get that out of my cupboard? That's my private book. You're not meant to be looking through that. Sorry, I couldn't help myself. Nosy bitch, I want to punch her in the fucking... Anyway, so that's me and your mum. We were banging. It's not right. Your hair's really long. And it's short now. Look. Long, short. I'm transgender, you fucking melt. Oh, sorry, I didn't know. Yeah, it was actually none of your business, and then you snooped through my shit and... Right, sorry.
But yeah, if that was the way that it went down, I would have laughed my ass off, but I think it would have been beneficial if they would have held off from telling us that Principal, whatever his name is. What is his name? Callahan? Conway? Principal Caraway, a professor who teaches a class on sacred alphabets, is a powerful guardian. Caraway is a transgender man. You and me both, homie. So, reading from the wiki article, I have just found out that the professor that I have been referencing as principal this whole time may just be a professor, which is kind of confusing since, I don't know, they just set it up. They just set it up to make it seem like he was the principal, but that is completely on me. Alright, back to the video. Professor Caraway talks to Snapdragon about all of this stuff later on. They have a conversation because Snapdragon seems to be questioning like a bunch of gender shit just roasting up all inside of him. And like that would have, I think, been a perfect time to smoothly release the information that Caraway is trans, because it's relevant to the conversation. I feel like we didn't benefit from really knowing previously. But yeah, I just think that that would have been a more natural way for that to happen. Moving on. My last con of this section is that it's really hard to figure out whether or not this is a kid's show or a young adult's show. It says in the very beginning that it is not a kid's show, it is not for the immature audience, and it is for adults. But the look and general feel of the show definitely clash with that idea, and then just sometimes there's a little bit of blood and swearing. Don't get me wrong, I like a little bit of blood and swearing. I like where they were going, but like, why not push it more if you're gonna make it an adult show? I don't know, maybe they were going to in season 2. I don't think there's going to be a season 2, but if there was, maybe they were gonna just go full on with the swearing and the ripping off heads, just stabbing the shit out of people. I don't know. But they also could have like benefited, I think, from making it a kids show. I don't know. I think that if they had just like dumbed it down a little bit, honestly, some people from Cartoon Network might have jumped the fuck onto that, and it would have been just a better quality show in general. But oh well, it's not gonna happen. Like, the show's already out. Moving on. There are actually some pretty great jokes in this show. There's some jokes that made me laugh. There's some points that, like, I wasn't laughing because of how stupid the show was. I was actually laughing at the writing and the line delivery and all that stuff. Because there are some lines that deliver very, very well. There's some lines that made me chuckle. There were points of the show that I was enjoying what I was watching, and I was ready to learn more about these people. And, you know, while there were some really awkward and out of place moments, specifically with the LGBT representation, there were also some really, really cute scenes that flowed very nicely, and I liked them, you know, like it warmed my little heart. It warmed my little rainbow heart. And I appreciate a show that can, you know, stand up and say, hey, we're gonna put gays in this show. Like, whenever a show like this comes out, everybody immediately gravitates towards the representation. And, like, did it represent enough, or did it represent too much, or blah, blah, blah. I don't know. I don't even think that this show did a bad job. In the end, it put some gay characters in there. It put some trans characters in there. There were portions of the conversations, specifically with Professor Caraway. There were some scenes where he was talking about transitioning. And yeah, they used the word transition magic, which is kind of dorky. But like, it genuinely was kind of sweet. And when he was talking to Snapdragon about all of that stuff, it wasn't bad. Like, he gave pretty good advice. He even said, hey, this is my journey, not yours. You have to figure it out on your own. And that's kind of nice.
And what would my family say? Would they still even want to be my family?
Snapdragon, you have time to figure it out. There are so many paths to becoming your true self, and this one is mine. I'm not saying that it's yours.
I like your nails. Would you still like me if I painted my nails?
Only if you promise to stick to flattering colors.
Be serious.
I am. Snap, I'm here for you forever, no matter what.
You can do that? Is that kind of transformation magic permanent?
I take a potion once a month to keep the spell active, which lets me be the real me.
It didn't have bad lessons. Most of the lessons were kind of kid show-esque, but they weren't bad. And I think that pretty much every episode had a lesson, which is usually what I look for in a show, if there isn't a plot that's super gripping, at least. But yeah, no. Overall, the show wasn't terrible. It was really fun to see cartoon anime people say the word bastard and swear a bunch and whatever. It was cool to see some blood in kind of like a kids show looking thing. It wasn't animated that well, but you know, it was still animated. But yeah, I think that overall the show was okay. It was not great, at least, but it wasn't terrible. It wasn't well produced. but it still was produced. They made a full season, and I think that they should be proud of that. You know, it's hard to animate. It takes a lot of time, and like, you know, I know that it's not our job to be animators. It's our job to consume and give feedback. But if I'm thinking about this as an animator, I can kind of look past it because watching it made me kind of realize some of the mistakes they made, and it's gonna make me a better animator, and it's gonna make me look at the things that I do wrong and try not to do that. The characters aren't necessarily lovable, but there aren't really that many bad characters. A lot of them are bland, but there are a few pretty good ones in there. The writing is not great. It's okay. Is this show worth the watch? For me, yes. I actually enjoyed myself quite a lot while watching it. It was entertaining in a lot of ways. I liked kind of picking apart the animation in my mind and laughing at some of the mistakes that the writers made or the actors made or the animators made, you know. But I also did enjoy the show. I had fun while watching it. So I'd say yes, it's worth the watch if you think you might have fun watching it. But yeah, you came here for an opinion, and that's what you got. High Guardian Spice was a very interesting show, and it's not as bad as people are saying it is. People just like ripping things up on the internet, I think. But don't get me wrong, it's not that great. Anyways, guys, thank you for tuning in. I know that this was kind of a long video. I did kind of like watching this and spouting my opinion on the internet. If you did enjoy this, please leave a like, comment, subscribe, whatever. I'd really appreciate it. I'm gonna try to do more videos. They might not all be like this. Sometimes I draw more and stuff. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed it, and whatever time of day it is right now for you, I hope you enjoy that too. Bye, you guys. Okay, this is the last take, Madison. Last take, okay. As they master the ways of battle and sorcery, the foursome form alliances, uncover legacies, face betrayals, and discover their true identity. Identities? Oh, I'm dead. I've died. I've said this sentence so many times.